Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a book haul video. I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I accumulated across April and May this year. It is June and I'm filming this in June, but I wanted to let you know about all the books that I've recently hauled. So first of all, I went to a book launch in May and I went to the Aurora Rising book launch. A friend of mine gave this to me and it's the advanced copy of Aurora Rising, which I'm so grateful to have, but I bought the finished copy of Aurora Rising as well and I'm currently reading it, but I've put it down somewhere and I genuinely can't remember where I've put it. So that is going to be put on hold until I can actually find it and literally pick it up to read it again. But this is a young adult sci-fi series by two of my favourite Australian YA authors, and it's multiple perspective. It hinges on these characters forming a squad in this new Aurora galaxy, and I don't really know too much more than that. I feel like there's going to be some sort of conspiracy and they're kind of the underdogs and the dregs of this school that band together and are forced together, and then they form friendships from that. And I really like the hate to love kind of, I want to say trope or pattern, but I don't necessarily need it to become love every time. So I love it when it becomes a hate to a chosen family situation, and I feel like that's going to happen in this book. Also, my lovely friend Tem at Babbling Books, I will link her channel below. She went to the book launch for Highway Bodies for me because I couldn't attend, and the lovely Alison signed their book for me, and I'm so excited to read this one. It is a queer zombie apocalypse book, and honestly, I don't need to know much more than that, but I feel like it's also multiple perspective, or it covers multiple characters from one perspective, as in a character runs into all these other characters and they kind of band together. I think this also has chosen family in it, which I'm all about, to be honest, and I don't know what else to say other than the fact that I'm just excited. I love zombies and I can't wait to read this book. Next up, I did a book trade on Twitter and they sent me a signed copy of Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson, and this has his signature in the front because clearly I don't have enough Brandon Sanderson books. If you've been on my channel, you know that I've got a huge collection, but this is just going to be added to that. I love Steelheart. It's his young adult series. It doesn't connect to his Cosmo universe. You can read it whenever you want to, and it's kind of a revenge story, and it's got X-Men superpowers in it, and it's just honestly a really great time. It's very fast paced and I love that there's a revenge plot. There's a unique magic system in it. I'll leave a video of my unique magic systems recommendations and this is in there, so if you want to have a look at that, I'll leave a link below. Next up, I have another book by one of my favourite authors, and this one came out in May, so I've kind of been spoiled for my favourite authors recently, but it is Queenslayer by Sebastian de Castell, and this is the sequel to Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. This is the 5th book in the series. Can't really obviously tell you what's going on in this one, but these again are a fast-paced young adult series. It does have chosen family in it, which is something that I'm obviously drawn to in a book. It follows Kellen, who has to learn magic, realises he can't to the extent that he wants to, and then he kind of bands together with these two also outcasts of the society, and the adventures pick up from there. I don't want to say too much more, but it has a lot of humour, it's very fast paced, and it's just got a really lovely world that really unfolds the more you delve into it, and it's just so lush and detailed. I really love it, so I can't wait to read this one. I anticipate it's going to be a 5-star book for me. Surprisingly, the next book isn't actually fantasy or sci-fi, so I've got Meat Market by Juno Dawson, and this one is the same author who wrote Clean, and this is also a contemporary young adult book. I really adored Clean when I read it recently, and it follows Lexi, who deals with addiction, and it's a very raw and candid story, and it doesn't shy away from things. It also doesn't demonize other characters for having mental health issues or addictions themselves, and that's what I really liked about it. Aside from that, I did also enjoy Lexi's voice in that story. It was very authentic, and that's the reason why I can't wait to read Meat Market. So this was sent to me by a publisher, which I'm really grateful for, and I can't wait to finish this one too. I feel like the way that I devoured Clean, I'm going to devour this as well, because I picked up Clean and I read it in basically one sitting because I just couldn't stop, and that is amazing for a contemporary book because it's not usually the type of book that I usually reach for, but Juno Dawson is definitely an exception. And Meat Market, I know, is about the fashion industry and this character who gets into the fashion industry, and it turns out to be quite nasty and brutal and not what she expected. So I believe that's what this follows, and I can't wait to get to this one too. Next, I have something a little bit shorter, and it is The Wicked and the Divine, and this is a graphic novel. It's the first in a series of graphic novels, and I know that it follows gods in human society, so every 90 years they come to Earth, and I think they all die or they only live for 2 years or something. On the back it says that all the gods are loved and all of them do die within 2 years, so I have read the first volume of this, but I really don't remember it. I read it so long ago, so that's why I bought it recently, because I want to reread it, probably do a review on it or talk about it in a video, because it's nice and short, so I should be able to get to that really quickly. So I'm looking forward to diving into this. I really love the art style as well. It's lovely and colourful, and this is just such a confusing kind of story to talk about, and it's also also building a lot of the detail early so that I can get into the story later on. So I do remember giving it about a 4 out of 5 stars, so I can't wait to start this one. I know it's going to be quick when I do pick it up, but I have a lot of books by some of my favourite authors that I want to read first, so I will get to this one eventually. And the next book has such a gorgeous cover, and it is Shadow Glass by Geppetto, and this is a young adult fantasy book. I feel like the best description of The Bone Witch, which is the first book, is describing it as a cross between Memoirs of a Geisha and The Name of the Wind, which are 2 books that I really loved. It has a similar story device to The Name of the Wind, in which the main character is experiencing and growing and learning her magic and learning to be essentially a geisha, but that version in this world. It's not a geisha, but it's similar. And while she's doing this, her future self is actually in the future relaying what is going on currently in her life. So you see that she's kind of got good tendencies, but the future self might not necessarily be a hero, because dark things and bodies tend to follow her around and you're not quite sure what happened between A and B. And that's what I really like about this. It's very mysterious and interesting. They've also got things called Heart's Glass, and that really conveys the different types of magic, and she is a bone witch, so she can basically become a necromancer. She can resurrect people, and in the first book she accidentally resurrects her brother, so it kind of, that's not a spoiler, it happens within the first couple of chapters and it kind of sets the tone of the story. So I don't want to talk about it too much because I haven't read the second book, I've only read the first one, and now I have book 2 and now book 3 of the series to read, so I'm quite looking forward to these ones too. Next up, I got a few books for my birthday. So I already had this one, this is the 5th season, but I ended up getting the 2 books that followed it. So I got the Obelisk Gate and the Stone Key for my birthday, and I've listened to the Obelisk Gate on audiobook already, and I really recently finished it and I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars as well. This is an adult fantasy series, and I can't talk too much about it, but I will go into a bit more of a description in my unique magic systems video, because the magic system in this is so beautiful and so detailed and has so much depth to it. Quite literally actually, because it talks about the earth. But this is a series that is so brilliantly diverse, but so honest in the way it conveys its voice of the main characters and its grief, and just the things that this story does in conveying and building its characters is just so beautiful. And I look from the end of book 2 all the way to where the characters were in book 1, and you can just feel the growth of them as you read. It's beautiful. So I can't wait to start the 3rd book, because this apocalyptic fantasy series is so good, and I think it's probably going to be a new favourite of mine. Next up, I have a really exciting book to show you, and I actually got it at the Aurora Rising launch. I didn't expect this to happen, but Jay is absolutely lovely, and he remembered me and gave me a copy of Dark Dawn, and this is a proof of his book coming out in September, and I have it so early and I've started it. I'm about 30 pages in, but I absolutely adore this series. If you didn't already know, if you haven't watched my bookshelf tour, then you wouldn't have seen my shelf dedicated to Nevernight, which is the first book, Nevernight, God's Grave, and then Dark Dawn. This is a young adult fantasy. It's kind of got the tone of a young adult fantasy, but it's leaning more into new adult and adult fantasy in the types of themes that it interrogates, especially having such explicit death and violence and sex in them. If you are of the younger audience of young adult, probably don't read these yet because they're a little bit more detailed and dark. But the reason these are so dark and detailed and explicit and just amazing, honestly, I can't think of enough adjectives to describe this book, but I can't wait to finish this one. I got it, I'm so grateful, and it's an assassin fantasy book. I love Mia Corvair, the main character. She goes on a revenge quest because her family gets murdered, and she goes to a school to become a blade, which is an assassin, so she can go and kill all of the people that were involved in her family's murder. So that is the premise to this story. It can be summed up in a very short way, but there is so much more detail when you dive into it. So I would definitely encourage people to pick up Nevernight, because I'm going to be picking up Dark Dawn and reading it before everyone else. So I need people to jump on board with this series so that I can talk to everyone when it eventually comes out. And then lastly for this haul, Dave was amazing and he got me a bunch of Robin Hobb books. So I'm just going to have to hold them up for you because these aren't going to be in any specific order. Dave got me all of these Robin Hobb books for my birthday, and these are actually the Robin Hobb books that I didn't own yet. So I got the first couple, I've read all of these in this stack here, and I read the first few of the series as well. And now that I have all of them in this beautiful parchment edition, I don't know what they're officially called, but the covers remind me of parchment. I'm so excited to have them, and I can't wait to reread them. I really want to reread this entire series. Given that it's a 15-book series, it's probably going to take me a while because these are such slow burn, detailed fantasy worlds, and I love them so much. They have a special place in my heart. So I'm so happy to have all of these now. So these are all the books that I got in April and May. They are very heavy, so they're throwing me off and I don't know how to end this video. But please let me know if you've read any of them in the comments and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!